So you've built your n8n workflow, but it's sitting there doing nothing. No users, no revenue, no product. But what if I told you we could take that workflow and turn it into a full-fledged AI SaaS in a single Claude Code session? I'm talking front end, back end, authentication, databases, deployment, all without writing a single line of code. Well, that is exactly what I'm going to teach you today as I show you how to go from a simple n8n workflow and turn it into an actual AI SaaS product. And what sounds extremely intimidating on the surface is actually much simpler than you think. And it is a skill you 100% need to have if you want to make money with AI as we move into 2026. So this is going to be a fun one. There's a ton of value in this lesson. So let's just get started. So the ultimate goal of today's video is to show you how to take your n8n AI automation or agent and turn it into this, an actual SaaS product. Now, along the way, we're going to hit on a number of different things, right? I'm going to show you how to do the front end, which is what you see here, how to do the back end, which is the coding logic that makes sure when I click different buttons, things actually work. I'm going to show you how to set up authentication so you can actually log in and data can be set for specific users. I'm going to show you how to set up a database to store all that data using Supabase. I'm going to show you how to deploy the app using Vercel. And really what I'm going to show you is how to harness the power of Claude Code. Now, if you hear Claude Code and you instantly get a little anxious because you've never used it before, that's okay. I'm going to link a video above that is essentially a beginner's guide to Claude Code. You do not have to be that technical to use this tool. So don't let that lack of experience stop you. If you watch that video, it should take you about 30, 40 minutes. You'll be ready to go for this lesson. So before we start our Claude Code adventure, let's just talk about what this automation is actually doing so we're all on the same page. So this is just a viral TikTok video analyzer. The user inputs a submission saying, hey, this is the channel I want to look at. It then uses an Apify scraper to scrape the latest 5 videos from there. And then it does analysis on the videos using Gemini. So it's breaking down, hey, here's the hooks they use. Here's their general call to action, their storylines. Here's what they're doing. Here's what you could do to replicate that, right? Is to help people create short form content. What you see here is actually a simplified version of it, which I simplified simply for time. And I have a full video that breaks down this in depth, and I'll link that above. Hint, you can actually get the workflow for this one by heading to my free Skool community, check the pinned comment. And so we want to take this viral video analyzer and SaaSify it, right? So what that looks like in the SaaS product is once I log in, I'm then brought to this page, which is the analysis, and then I simply input the channel name of whatever video I'm trying to analyze. That analysis is then completed on the back end inside of n8n, which then pushes the output back to our web page. And so you see the video breakdown analysis, right? The concept, the audience, a hook analysis, content structure, visual style, and recreation framework, right? So that's what our app is doing, but we've taken it outside of this and actually put a pretty face on it. So you could, hey, scale this up, throw Stripe on it, actually charge people for this product. So how do you do that for your particular n8n automation or agent? Well, what we need to do is we need to essentially break down what our automation does, what we want our app to look like, and we're going to put that inside of a document that's known as a PRD, a product requirements document. That's just us putting our thoughts on paper. Now, what that is eventually going to turn into is it's going to turn into a document called Claude.md. That's kind of what you see right here. Now, Claude.md, this is a file for Claude Code to look at that gives it a broad overview of essentially what it is you're trying to build. This gives it constant context for it to understand, hey, this is what they want me to actually create. That way, as you create your project, as you do all these things, it always has a document to go and reference and essentially ground it, right? So it's never like, oh man, I forgot what I'm building, right? I forgot the architecture. We're going to lay all that out at the beginning so we know exactly what we're building, what the tech stack is. That way, when Claude Code goes to work, we're not stopping in the middle of the project and being like, what should we actually do for our database? What should we actually do for our backend architecture? We're going to figure all that out on the front side. And if that is fleshed out very, very well, it's going to make this process so much easier. And so to help you out, I've created this PRD/Claude.md template that you can take and then bring to Claude Code, and you can have a conversation with Claude to flesh this out. And it will establish essentially your architecture and your vision for what it is you're trying to build. And so what it talks about is first is your n8n automation. Like, what does it do? What are the inputs? What are the outputs? And then we go into things like the front end and the back end, the database, the authentication, and then hosting. Now you'll notice here inside the template, I include a lot of default things for you already, especially with the tech stack, right? I'm saying, hey, we should do this with Next.js 14 with an app router. We're going to be Supabase for our backend. Now, you don't have to use this. I put these in here in case you're kind of just like, I don't really know what to do, Chase. Like, this is my first time doing it. Like, what do you recommend? Well, this is what I recommend. And the reason I recommend these things is because this is stuff that AI tends to be really good at when it comes to coding, right? Next.js sort of architecture. And so you're not going off the beaten path here. It has tons of training data on it, and it's going to give you a good product. And so what we're going to do is we're going to copy this whole template, and we're going to bring it into Claude Code. Now, before we open up Claude Code, I want you to just create a new folder somewhere. It can be anywhere, probably in your documents. I'm just going to do it on the desktop so you can see it. And this is where our project is going to be. So we're just going to call this n8n SaaS test, right smack dab in my desktop. And then I'm going to open up Claude Code. So I run Claude Code inside of Cursor. So I opened up Cursor. I just went to open new folder. I clicked my new folder, and here we go. So I'm going to start a new terminal. I'm just going to type in Claude. Now, what I want to do is I first just want to add a new file inside of my folder. So I'm going to come up to the left. I'm just going to call this prompt1. And inside here, I'm going to paste inside that template. And then the second thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to download my n8n workflow JSON, and I'm going to put it into this folder as well so it can understand what it's working with. And so all I did is I dragged and dropped that JSON over here to the left. So we've given it the template and the JSON. So now I just said, take a look at the prompt1 file and the n8n JSON I just dropped in. I want to create an AI SaaS using the n8n automation as the backend. Let's run through the prompt1 template to start. We will use that as the base for Claude.md file you will create. You will also notice I'm on plan mode. So right now we're just having a conversation with the AI because all we want to do, our goal is to get on the same page in terms of what the heck the plan is. So as it goes through the template and the JSON file, it's going to have a number of questions for you with potential answers. Don't be afraid to just type something in here. If you have no idea what it's asking for, you need some more context. But what you will probably get asked at some point is a webhook question. And this is important. So let's talk about sort of the webhook infrastructure, because webhooks are how we connect this n8n backend essentially to the front end. So this is what your n8n automation probably looks like. It has some sort of input, some sort of output. These inputs and outputs will need to change when we turn it into a SaaS, because we can no longer use a form submission and we can no longer have it terminate with Airtable. We need a way to connect it to here, to what you have online. And to do that, we're going to use a webhook. Now, the way the webhook works is when someone submits something on my webpage, right? They want to look at a channel. That's a certain amount of information. That information is going to be sent to this webhook. From there, it does everything it needs to do. And then we need to send a response back to our web app that says, hey, here's the output. Here's all the information I got. Because all this video breakdown, right? All the stuff you see here, this is created here inside of n8n. We just need some way to push it there. And so on the back end, we will be doing an HTTP request. Why do we not have a respond to webhook request like you've seen in previous videos? Well, because it may take longer than you think, and we don't want to deal with any sort of timeouts. As for the HTTP request, we're going to do post. For the URL, this will change, but we'll just set it to localhost for now. What I want you to do then is to save it, set it to active, bring back the webhook and go to production URL and copy that. At some point, Claude Code will ask you if you have your n8n URL ready. I'm going to say, hey, I have it ready. It's now asking me if we have a domain. I'm just going to say we will test inside of localhost for now. And then I'm just going to submit my answers. So you will continue that back and forth with Claude until you're satisfied with sort of the plan it's come up with. If it is close to your vision and you think it has a good grasp of what you're trying to build, we're going to go ahead and move forward, and you can just hit Shift Tab and you can move off of plan mode. You should have been on plan mode to start. We can go to accept edits, and you're just going to tell it, hey, I now want you to create that Claude.md file. And this is that Claude.md file. Again, this looks very similar to the template we were looking at before, but now it has filled out everything, right? We have our webhook URL in here. It's looked at some of the JSON elements of how data is going to look when it both comes in and out of the automation. And essentially all of the architecture we have built is right here. Now, if for whatever reason You're like, you know what? I don't know if this is legit. You know what you can do? You can take something like this, copy paste it, bring it to ChatGPT, bring it to Gemini. You can always get a second opinion from other AI systems to make sure Claude hasn't hallucinated some crazy plan. But by and large, by following the template and by doing an app with this sort of tech stack, it's going to give you something that's solid. So now it's time to let Claude just go to work, right? We're going to let it spread its wings and fly. And now we're going to tell it, begin with the project setup. So begin with the project setup. And now it's going to send it and it's going to start coding everything. Now, as it does this, you're going to get a lot of questions where it's going to ask you, hey, do you want to proceed with this command? You're going to have the options for yes and yes, don't ask again. For the most part, you're going to want to do just yes, don't ask again. There is an option, right? If I do a new terminal and I were starting up another Claude Code terminal, if I do Claude space dash dash dangerously skip permissions, this essentially allows Claude to bypass ever asking my permission for certain commands. So I don't suggest doing this right away if you have no idea what it's doing, but understand as you get a little more experience, and if you're tired of constantly giving it permission, there is sort of the nuclear option. So we let Claude Code go to work, and you can see it created the entire project infrastructure for us. It breaks it down in this graph, but you can also see everything that was created over here on the left. And so now it gives us the next steps of what it's going to do and what we need to do. So what we are going to need to do now is we need to set up Supabase. We're going to need to configure our environment variables. And then we need to update our n8n workflow before we can finally start this app on our local host, AKA on our computer, to test it out and see what we missed. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to head to Supabase. This is something you can do totally for free. And Supabase is where our database is going to live. So you're going to head to supabase.com, or you're going to create an account, and then you're going to go to start your project. We're going to go to new project, call it whatever you want. We'll call this n8n YouTube test, give it a password, and then you're going to do create new project. Now it's going to take you to this page. On the left, I want you to go to SQL editor. And SQL editor, for all intents and purposes, this is where we're going to put in some code, essentially, and it's going to create the structure for our actual database tables. You could do this manually, or since Claude Code is so great, it gave us all the code to do it automatically. And so it tells us that as well. It says run the SQL schema from Claude.md in the SQL editor. So we're going to go back to our Claude.md file. We're going to find that SQL. And you can see right here under database, right? It gives us the schema, and this is what we're going to copy paste into there. So we're just going to go here, right underneath SQL, and we're going to copy all of this back inside the SQL editor, paste this in here, and this does everything, right? This is going to set up the tables. It's going to set up the row level security. Again, you just have to copy paste. We're going to hit run over here on the right, and then you should see it say success, no rows returned. Right? That means it worked. If you come over to the left and you click on database, you can see what it created, right? So we have a table for the actual jobs, right? The actual work being done, and then we have our actual profiles. And this is also going to play into the authentication, which allows us to, have someone go onto the website and create a profile based on their email. And we're just going to keep going down the list and knocking out the things we need. So next, it needs us to copy our credentials over to .env.local. So if I come over here, you see over here, .env.local. Now, this section is essentially where all of your secrets, so to speak, are going to be posted. Now, it's a .env.local file. So the thing is, eventually we're going to push this to GitHub. These secrets will not be exposed here, but our project still needs to know about them so it can actually talk to Supabase and talk to all these things. So what you're going to do is we're going to go into Supabase, we're going to find those different secrets, and we're going to paste them into here. So we're going to hop back into Supabase. You're going to come up here to the top where it says connect. You're going to go to app frameworks, and this is where you're going to find your next public Supabase URL. So I'm going to copy this, and don't worry, everything you see here secrets-wise and key-wise for me, I'm going to delete after this video. Paste that in there. Next, we need the Supabase anon key. And to get here, you'll go to project settings. You're going to go to API keys on the left, and this is where you're going to see your anon public key as well as your service role secret. You're going to copy both of these and paste them here in their appropriate places. Next up, make sure your n8n webhook URL matches the production URL. And for now, we are not going to be doing the n8n webhook secret, although that's something you could always add at a later time. For app URL, for now, localhost is just fine. This is something we will change once we actually deploy it. So make sure you save that, and we're set when it comes to setting up our environment variables. Next, it says we need to update our n8n workflow, but as you'll see, this is something we'll update once we get the test server running. That way we can actually see what the data looks like when it's flowing back and forth. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna tell it we did all this, and we wanna start our dev server. So we told it to start up the dev server, and it gave us the link, localhost 3000. So we're just gonna follow the link. So here's where it took us, obviously hideous, right? But the UI is something we can change later. First, we just want to make sure the core functionalities work. So let's check the authentication. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. So let's do an email, and we'll do passwords. So we created our account, Supabase, then automatically sent me an email to confirm it. So confirm, and now we'll log in again. So login is working. Now it's time to test the actual functionality of our app. Now, this will not work off the bat immediately. So we're going to be doing some troubleshooting with Claude Code inevitably, and we will probably have to tinker with the n8n workflow a little bit as well. And so to do that, just have executions tab up and ready to go so we can see how data is moving around. So first test, let's see what happens. All right, right away, failed to create job. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside of Claude Code and tell it what happened. So I just ran the error inside of Claude Code, and it's telling me it looks like there's an issue in Supabase with the SQL code it gave us. So it gives us the code to update it. So I'm just going to copy this, go to the SQL editor, open up a new tab, paste this in. All right, it says success, no rows returned. So let's try again. And when I started the analysis this time, we can see right away, we get a loading bar. So data got sent in some form. Let's see if it also got sent on the n8n side. So looking at our executions tab, we have gotten some data, which is important, right? The webhook has a green check mark, which means our web app over here is actually sending data to n8n, although something's getting stuck along the way. But most importantly, we know data is moving back and forth. So I'm gonna copy to editor. But when I look at the TikTok scraping, it looks like we have some issues with what is being passed here. You can see how this is red. So I'm just gonna pull this up, and chances are we just need to change how this is mapped. So what should be mapped here is the actual profile. So I'm just gonna delete this, and I'm gonna map over the username. Now that should work. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to analysis, and we're just going to run this again and see what happens. Now here's a look on our second run, and we can notice this looks way better. We didn't get hung up on the Amplify node, and data actually passed through everything all the way till we got to the final HTTP request, which is where we need to send data back up to our app. So we're going to debug an editor, unpin. I'm going to go ahead and just pin all this data for now so it doesn't accidentally rerun it. And let's take a look at our HTTP request. So right now, the reason it's not working should be obvious. This probably isn't the right URL, and we're also not sending an actual body. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go to Claude Code, and we're going to ask it what we should do. So I just wrote, I got an error on the HTTP request node at the end of the execution. What should the URL be, and what should the JSON body be? Now, you might not even know to necessarily ask that question, right? So what you can also do is if you get stuck in your workflow somehow, just save the workflow, download it, and just like we did at the beginning, drop it in to the folder that you're working on. That way, Claude Code has an updated view of what's going on, and it can also tell you, hey, this is what I think is working, this is what isn't, this is what we can change to get it working. Right, so this is what it's telling us we should use for the callback URL. So let's see what that looks like. I'm gonna copy that, paste that in here, set it to expression. Now this is red, so I know this isn't exactly correct, but it's trying to call back to a callback URL. So if I go back to the webhook, does it give me a callback URL? And it does. You see that right here at the bottom with this. So I'm gonna get rid of this, put this in here, and there we go. Now that should work. Now next we need the JSON body. And again, Claude Code has provided. So we want to make sure we're on post, and then this is the body we want to pass. So oftentimes when it gives you this, you'll notice it's red, so it isn't exactly correct, but you know what it's looking for, right? It's trying to reference the original webhook, and it wants the job ID. So all I'm going to do, again, go back to the original webhook, and I'm searching for the job ID, and I see that right here. So it gave me a 90% solution, but you're smart enough to take a look at what it's trying to do. Next, it's trying to do videos. Now, what is this talking about? Well, we know it's just JSON dot, so it's essentially trying to find the output. So if we go to the basic LLM chain, it wants this full output. So if I put this in here, that's probably not going to work either, right? See how it says object, object. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'll just make sure it's on the last chain. And I'm just going to copy all this JSON. Just click this right here. And I'm going to say, hey, like this is the output we're getting. How should we set up the JSON body? So I just said, this is the output before the HTTP request, and then I pasted in the line. So now Claude Code has context of what I'm seeing in n8n, so it can give me a better fix. So it's giving me a couple options, right? It gave me one like this, which is a little more complicated, but also a simpler approach. So let's try this stringify approach and see if that works. And so I tried its stringify option that you see right here. And we can see over here on the right, here's all the data. So it looks good. So let's see if third time's a charm. Analyze video. And we'll bring up executions again. So we ended up getting one more error on the HTTP request. This time it says the service refused the connection. So again, I'm just going to copy the errors and bring it back into Claude Code. Now you can see in our latest run, we've had a successful n8n execution. Now, what was the latest thing we did here? Well, the latest thing we did was we introduced ngrok. Ngrok is something that allows us to create a essentially temporary URL, because as you saw before, we were running into some issues where this HTTP request wasn't able to go off because it was trying to send it to our local host, AKA our computer, and it just couldn't do that. So just by troubleshooting that with Claude Code, it was able to fix the problem on its own. And here's what the output looks like inside of our app. Yes, it looks hideous, but we don't care about that right now. We just wanted to make sure the functionality was working, which it is. Now we can actually move on to making this UI look way nicer, right? So that's what we're going to do now. Now, when it comes to creating a UI you like, that has a lot to do with personal taste. I suggest go find websites you like, take screenshots, bring them to Claude, and sort of work backwards from there. But one place that's pretty good is v0.app. V0, owned by Vercel. Vercel is what we're going to use to deploy our application, but they're also the creators of Next.js, which is part of our tech stack. Now, if you come to this website, if you go to design systems, let's say you were doing something with dashboards, they have a ton of different like dashboards examples you can look at. If you go to templates, over here on the left, there are a ton of templates that users have created, and many of them actually look really good. Now, let's say we wanted to do this one, and you saw this one earlier, which is this brutalist void portfolio template, right? Looks pretty sweet. So how can I do this? Should I just take a screenshot? Well, that's one option. But if we're inside of V0, we can actually essentially dump all the code inside of Claude Code. So if you want to do that, I'm just going to hit open in V0. I'm going to click these three buttons on the top right. And then I'm just going to copy this command right here, right? So three buttons, copy that command. We're then going to go into Claude Code and we're going to say, hey, I want to work on the UI now. I want to essentially copy this UI design, and you're going to paste that command. So I just wrote, let's work on making the UI look nice now. I want to copy this style, but with our content. I found it on V0, and then I pasted that command in there, and then we're just going to hit go. All right, so Claude just finished up with our UI redesign. That took it somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. And so we're just going to follow the link and see what it looks like. And here's what it came up with, right? Pretty darn close, essentially the same as the example we gave it, right? We got this really cool hero page. We got some nice scrolling animations, some nice visuals, right? This looks good, you know? So all we would do now is we would go through each page and just make sure the UI actually stuck. So over here on the dashboard, we have that same font, that same kind of black and red vibe. Like this looks really good. And if there was anything in particular I didn't like, it'd be simple as me taking screenshots of that particular item, bringing it back to Claude Code and say, hey, let's fix this, let's fix that. We're pretty much done with local testing, right? We know everything works. We like how it looks. Now I want to get it out there in the real world. I want to deploy it. And that's going to be somewhat of a two-step process. First, we're going to push all this code to GitHub. And then once it's inside of GitHub, then we're going to go to Vercel and it's going to connect to GitHub and it's going to spin everything up. The nice thing about that is anytime we make a change to our code, it will get pushed to GitHub, which then automatically updates Vercel, which automates our active deployment, right? So it's always going to have the latest version ready to go. So what you're going to do, you're going to go to github.com. You're going to create an account. It's totally free. You're going to see this dashboard. We're going to create a new repository. We're just going to call it n8n SaaS YouTube. And then you can keep this as private. We're then going to create repository and see all this. You can just copy this right here, all this stuff. And then we're just going to bring that to Claude Code. And we're going to say, hey, it's time to commit it to GitHub. Now, when you do this inside of Claude Code, it may ask you to like connect certain GitHub accounts. You may need to do that the first time you run this, but once you do that, it's a very smooth process. Now, before we actually commit it, what I like to do, just to kind of give me a warm and fuzzy feeling, is I'll just tell it, run a production build and fix any errors before we commit this to GitHub and deploy. This kind of just lets it do a final once over to make sure we didn't miss anything. So after it's done its once over, go ahead, paste in that information we took from GitHub and tell Claude Code to commit your code base. Once you've done that, you can go back into GitHub, just refresh that page you're on, and you should see all of your code right here. Now we're going to move to Vercel and actually deploy this. So you're going to go to vercel.com. You're going to create an account. Make sure you connect your GitHub account to Vercel, right? We want those two things connected. You're then going to go to Overview. We're going to add new project, and then it should automatically import your GitHub repository. So I'm just going to click import on the n8n SaaS one we just did. Now, when we get to this page, we're going to need to add some of our environment variables. And you'll notice that Claude Code tells us to do that as well. Now, of note, if it tells you to pass the next public app URL and it tells you to set the Vercel deployment URL, just go ahead and tell it that you're not going to know the deployment URL until after we deploy, and it may make a few changes to your code. But beyond that, what you're going to do is these first four, we're just going to copy them, go inside of here, and just paste them in there and get rid of that empty one. Next, you're just going to deploy. Now, when we're deploying it, understand we may run into issues here, just like we ran into issues with the functionality, and we're just gonna go through the same process. It'll give you an error, you'll give it to Claude Code, and you'll keep iterating until it fixes it. And I promise you, it's gonna fix it. Okay, so right on cue, it looks like we had a deployment fail with a certain error. So all you're gonna do is you're gonna copy this. You'll come back to Claude Code and just say, got deployment error, and then paste it in there, right? And then just continue to repeat this process until the deployment succeeds. All right, so after that first hookup, it was able to deploy, and you'll get a page that looks like this. So I'm just gonna go to continue to dashboard. And right here, we have the domain. Now you can always go out and buy your own domain, right? They're giving you a domain right here, but it's super easy to come into the dashboard and add a real domain. But they give you this one for free. So if I click on it, I'm here on our app. And the final step is just to make sure that everything works. So just like we tested everything in the local dev server, now would be the time to go through all the pages, to go through all the steps, right? Logging in, creating a new account, doing the analysis, and making sure it works, because sometimes things can be a little different when they're on the production side versus when it's done locally. Now, let me run through some of the common things you'll need to update when you go to production. First will be Supabase. So if you go to Supabase, you go to authentication on the left, and then you go to URL configuration. We're going to have to update this because before it was going to the local host when we created a new account. Now it needs to go to our updated URL. You'll just need to replace that with your new URL and then /auth/callback. If you get confused, just bring your new domain to Claude Code and say, hey, I have a new domain. Do I need to update anything inside of Supabase? It'll walk you through that step by step. And the next thing you need to do is just run the functionality test. You will probably get some sort of error because there's some disconnect between going from the local testing to prod. Again, just copy the entire error you get, bring it to Claude, and troubleshoot. And after one round of troubleshooting, we got it working, which is awesome. And so this is where I'm going to leave you today. And we've actually covered quite a lot. We've gone from the single n8n automation, and we actually have turned it into a full-blown AI SaaS product. Now, the work is definitely not done. What you have in your hands right now is an MVP. This is something you can actually take to market and ask, do people care about it, and will they buy it? The next steps are just that, adding some sort of payment structure with Stripe. Again, Claude Code can walk you through that. And then actually the nitty-gritty details of making sure everything works exactly how you want it, right? This is very bare metal, right? It gave us the functionality, but we can mess with things with the UI. We can change the user experience. There's a ton you can work on. But the point is you now have the foundation and infrastructure to do that without writing a single line of code. So I hope you were able to get a lot out of this video. As always, leave some comments down below. Let me know what you thought. Definitely check out the Skool resources. We have tons of free resources, as well as the Chase AI Plus community, which is if you're a little more serious about turning AI into a career and making money. But either way, thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.